Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the September 15th Open Board of Education meeting of the Horsehead Central School District Board of Education. Tonight's meeting, as all meetings, are broadcast for the public to join in. It is important to note that as of September 12th, all emergency declarations in the state of New York are no longer in place as the governor has let them lapse. The only thing that's in place at this time is just following appropriate COVID illness protocol, and we appreciate our community for doing so. In addition, at this point, I know people like the virtual board meetings at times, although we've done live streaming, there are no more ability of boards of education to have any type of virtual communication in any format except for the fact that a board member may be away and we go through proper public notification for board members to come in, as long as the majority of the board are seated in the location of public service that the public must attend. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, we have a public comment that is also in the works throughout our procedures. We will be reading that and we will be updating that in the future according to some recommendations from NISBA. And I'd like to welcome everybody in, and I'd like to turn it over to start the meeting to our president, Ms. Christine Dow.
All right, good evening, everybody. Can you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first up on our agenda, we have the approval of our minutes from our August 17th regular business meeting and action on the tax warrant. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? Oh, sorry.
Where do we need this?
Yes.
Under section 5 of the minutes, there was a discussion about charging for athletic events, and I'm cited in there. And if I said the community supported $2 million, I meant $200 million. So I might have misspoken at the time, so I'd like to have that corrected to $200 million.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Okay. Moving on, the next part of our agenda is the public content. And I just want to, any public community member is welcome to come to our board meetings to address our board at a school board meeting. When you come up to the podium, I ask you to give your name and your address. And just one thing I just want to reiterate is by law, the board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. So please refrain from mentioning any personnel issues or any individual students. When you do come to the podium, you will have 3 minutes. I will give you a time warning. If you go over 3 minutes, we do need to stick to our board policy. And please, when you do come up, give your name and your address. We already said that. So if there's anybody who would like to address the board, I invite you up to the podium now. Okay. All right, moving on. Next part of our agenda, we have our report from our student representative. So it's a new school year, and I'd like to welcome Tatiana to her first board meeting, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board and Merced's community. For those of you who do not yet know me, I am Tatiana Kopp, and to say that I am absolutely ecstatic to be representing the student body on the Board of Education this year would be an understatement. There have been many exciting things happening in the high school as we continue our return to what appears to be the most normal year yet. The varsity football team has had a successful start to their season, playing 2 games against Cicero, North Syracuse, and Binghamton. They are gearing up for another terrific home game this Friday against Union Endicott at 7 p.m. Cross country has been doing terrific in their season so far, completing 2 competitions against Corning and Oneonta. The cross country team is looking forward to their upcoming staff meeting in Park Station next Tuesday, in which their senior recognition will be held. The girls varsity swim team continues through their season undefeated, winning at 3 different meets so far. They are looking forward to another great meet this Tuesday. The Horseheads Blue Raider Marching Ensemble kicked their season off with a bang this Sunday, winning first place in their competition at Jordan Elbridge. Their 2022 program, entitled Bloom, depicts the growth of a garden from start to finish, using excerpts from famous pieces such as Morning Mood and Illumination Theory. The Marching Ensemble also plans to host their very first home show since 1996, entitled Sounds of the Southern Tier on October 8th. We would like to give a huge congratulations to our selected all-state soloists, Jiwoo Kim and Ricky Condon, along with alternates Nathan Zhao and Anu Kudba, as this is no easy feat. Greener players are holding their very own bake sale at the Do It Center this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. as fundraising for all of the wonderful performances they plan to put on this year. They had an informational meeting yesterday evening announcing that the spring musical for this year will be The Little Mermaid. Auditions for GRP's annual variety show are quickly approaching on Tuesday the 20th and Wednesday the 21st. Talents of all kinds are welcome and encouraged to try out. The senior class has their fundraiser kickoff tomorrow at 7:50 in the auditorium, centered around kindness and service to others. They have already begun to plan for many more exciting events for our seniors this year. I am delighted to be given the opportunity to inform you of all the wonderful activities taking place in our school this year, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great job.
Nice job.
Welcome. All right, moving on to our presentations. Our first one is our external audit presentation from Mr. Zuber.
It always happens to me. I have to follow someone who's energetic as a young person. Speaks so well in front of a large, a reasonably sized group. So I have 30-year-old staff folks that don't want to get up in front of a group and chit chat like that. So very good job. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I'm here to present the June 30th, 2022 basic financial statements of the Horseheads Central School District. And I'm pleased to report that we have met with the audit team, I think it was Monday, September 12th, and we reviewed the basic financial statements, and we really had a very nice discussion with the audit committee. We talked about year-over-year variances, we talked about budget variances, we talked about fund balances and reserves, and we talked about
They're all around you.
internal controls, checks
John,
and balances.
Tom, if you could get closer to the mic for the thank you.
How's that?
Yep, much better.
See, she did such a good job of making this. So we did have a very, very nice discussion relating to the basic financial statements. And I'm pleased to report we did issue an unqualified opinion on material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. That's really where you want to be. These financial statements are presented parallel. So again, very, very positive financial results. You, along with every other school district in New York State, continue to face challenges. We have a lot of good, positive news lately when it comes to state aid and all of the different federal stimulus packages that school districts receive. And in fact, the district did spend a little over $10.5 million in federal stimulus funds this year. And you'll have a few more years to continue to spend those dollars. And so, while the end of the year in very good financial condition, the long-term planning continues to be something that the district will monitor and continues to do a very good job over that. Because as you know, when you get these one-time stimulus packages, that at some point they go away. So you want to just make sure that you have a very good plan to do that. And we see that when we take a look at the school district reserve funds, right? And the district has done a very good job over the past few years in building up some of the reserve for some very specific purposes, right? Specifically the capital reserve. It's been a very useful reserve for the school district over the years. And you can see when we look at the year-end financial position, although we see fund balance went from $20 million down to $13 million, it was a planned utilization, right? We used a little over $10 million from our capital reserve to help finance our capital projects. So when you kind of pull that back out, your overall equities increased. So again, so that reduction was a planned reduction of fund So again, overall, the district continues to do a very good job in monitoring the reserves. Again, a very important part of the budget process. In addition to monitoring reserves, you're using both reserves and fund balance to support your budget. You can see you used a little over $1 million in appropriated fund balance. So you're using fund balance and reserves. So a little over $1.6 million in total between reserves and fund balance. Very positive. It's consistent from one year to the next for a district this size. Very reasonable. Okay, because the lower that number is, the easier it is to manage. Okay, so again, you're doing a very good job when it comes to the fund balance and reserves. Again, when we talk about the different reserves the school district has, where does it come from? Your revenues and expenditures, your budgetary surpluses. You can see on the revenue side, you basically broke even from the one year to the next. You're just down slightly from one year to the next. And primarily, it has to do with some of the results on the expense side of the budget. You see that sale of property and compensation for loss, that negative variance there. That's where you see insurance recoveries for stop loss. So you have a medical program that you're self-funded for, and so when you hit certain caps and your expenses get so high, you get reimbursements from your stop loss coverage, right? And you didn't hit any of those caps. In fact, when you look at the expenditure side of the budget on the next slide, you see that we have some positive budget variances in some of the benefit line items, which means you did have some savings in those health insurance programs. Okay, so again, because you had savings in the health insurance programs, you didn't get some of those reimbursements. But we talked a little bit about where those variances or where those reserves come from. You can see this year you generated a little over $4.8 million on the budget side, on the expense side, reduced by your appropriated fund balance, appropriated reserves, the revenue shortfall, and that $10 million coming out, right? So if you were to take away that $10 million transfer to the capital fund, you would have a little over around $3 million fund. Okay. So again, just looking at how those year-end surpluses impact your overall equity increase. But again, overall, the district's doing a very good job when it comes to the long-term planning related to the school district. Again, the last slide here just talks about internal controls, checks, and balances. And again, as I mentioned before, there were no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. A few minor procedural items. Some of them we don't really like to have to criticize school districts for, but we have to talk about them because being over in terms of your school and fund balance, it's a federal regulation, and the feds didn't really change that regulation. So it's just a communication there, and it did implement some prior year items that we talked about in the past. So again, very positive from the audit side of it. Shows that you're reacting to our discussions and implementing corrective action. So again, very positive from the audit side. Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Zuber?
I have my usual one from each year. Is there anything in your unqualified opinion that shows any negativity, fraud, or any excess expenditures on the district's part in the overall financial position of the district in relationship to administration or Board of Education?
So as I mentioned, unqualified opinion will material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. That's basically the standard opinion. It's really the opinion you're looking for. So again, as we go through any audit, we do ask questions about fraud and the risk of fraud, and we have to assess that process. Nothing came to our attention during those normal discussions. But again, those just occur during the normal course of the audit.
And last, in general, the position of the Horsehead Central School District as compared to year over year in other districts that are we in good shape?
Yeah, so again, when you look at any school district, every school district is a little different. It really depends on your long-term financial plan and what you've done over the past few years. And again, as you all know, you folks have just gone through some pretty significant capital projects, and we're in the process of some pretty significant capital projects. So your future needs are a little bit different than another district that doesn't have that, right? So based on your long-term plan, you're following your plan, which is really what we're looking for, and what is very important in the monitoring.
Thank you. Any other questions on the board? As always, thank you for the culminating part of the end of the audit process.
Thank you.
Judge Carey.
I believe Tony is up next.
And now we will shift, while the board is still away, to our educational program planning, presented by our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Tony Gill.
So just first, I want to introduce that Tiffany and I will be speaking. Kelly might chime in here and there as we go through a presentation. I'm going to go back and forward real quick. So just as a landing page, this is our Canvas system. This is the interface that is being used by our staff and students, and the parents might have a different view, but I just want us, we're going to start using this as our landing page for our presentations, as well as start using Canva, which is a presentation software now available to us. So as we stated in our previous meeting, we were going to start with a refresh. We have several new board members that weren't around when we first talked about the origins of the 2030 project. The brick and mortar, we're all very familiar with the capital project, but at the same time, we wanted to match that with an instructional plan and an academic plan moving forward. Starting with looking at what we've done prior and what we could do better moving forward. So we built new classrooms with the expectations of the new instruction of 20th century, although we're 22% into the 20th century, or 21st century. So that said, we're going to just do a quick review of the design. When I talk about the educational plan as it came about, know concurrently that we were working on the design plans and the master plan of our capital project. So these were two concurrent things occurring. Then we're going to talk about our current implementation, or how things have developed. Talk about the pause that occurred during the pandemic and how that, what happened there, but also how that showed the need even more importantly for the work that we're doing. And then we're going to just do a quick look. We're in the reflection stage of our next steps in the work, and then we'll talk about what we're going to present next. So we'll start with the origins. The design was, we had a planning team. You'll see the members. It was a small team. Prior to the Horsehead's 2030 educational plan, there was something called the IT, the implementation team. It was our site-based teams were in line with the work of the IT. Every year the IT looked at its 96 plus, Sean, did I get that right? Principles? 104 different initiatives that were found in this dense document. Most of them would say, what's the famous acronym? WIP, in progress, right? It was, yeah, we're working on it. There was no way to measure the 100 plus different initiatives that were supposed to be occurring. They were all great ideas, but the prioritization was difficult. There was effort by the IT to say, okay, these are the ones that we're going to focus on this year and move and have site-based teams in the building work on such things, and the district trying to review those items, but it was just too dense of a document. So we had an exit ticket. We asked that team to say, okay, what's going well? What should we do better? What are your concerns? And we took that information, we passed it along, and we created a team of educational leadership made up of board members, central administration, building administration, in the format of their unit, HA and HTA teachers. So they established this planning team. They talked about, okay, we need to have an educational conversation. Who needs to be at the table? And that was the 2030 team that was later developed. What is the charge of this planning team? Really to discuss the next steps of education and who needs to make sure the right people are at the table and to review the work moving forward in its initial state. So that team met a couple times and devised that 2030 team, the nuts and bolts. The members of the board, administration, teachers, staff, parents, community members, students participated over the course of several months, many meetings, discussing first and foremost what's our vision, where are we heading, and how are we going to get there, our mission. And based on that, what are our core beliefs that we want to move forward. Affinity processes was something we used often. For those not familiar, that's where each individual as a team gets to provide input, and then you sort of put it all in front of you, and a team of people kind of start to say, okay, this relates to this, and they start to conceptualize and compartmentalize the information, so nothing is lost. All ideas are held and affirmed, and you start to say, okay, this is important to us. We've seen this word 15 times out of 37. Let's talk about that one more. So that process was used quite often to ensure that the 37 stakeholders would have input during the process. It was also the charge of all 37 members between meetings to go back to their constituencies, those that they were representing, to bring more information to the table over the course of these meetings. This is the structure that ended up being created, the organizational chart. You can see the right side is the one we've often been familiar with. That's when it comes down to construction and the work that we do there. On the left side, you see how that planning team worked with that. Of course, it's 2030 team, and how these leadership teams and these committees and action teams were, thought that it would evolve in 2017-18 when this came to fruition. So that was an intent. You'll also see, and we still do this today, and hold true to this document, because we have these committees that are trying to establish action teams. We have that connection between leadership teams and the OACM in our design meetings, that we go into each building and meet multiple times with the architects and the construction management. So there's always that crossover to that brick and mortar with the work that we do. To say every word matters would be an understatement. We spent many meetings. It took several meetings over the course of months to just get to this statement. It seems someone's looking at the first time and then, yeah, it's good. That's. But there was a lot of passion, a lot of words, a lot of conversations about each thing here, and each word chose with intentionality of how we're moving forward as a district. Our mission, ingeniously, I can't remember exactly who it was, I wish I do, I believe it was a teacher, just came up with those 3 E's and set it at the table, and it just stuck. And it just made sense. That's how we get to that vision. If that's our aspirational vision of what we want to do, we get there by exploring and the empowerment, the excel. One thing that is so powerful about our vision, and not to be biased as being part of it, but it doesn't just speak about students, it speaks about us as an organization. It's employees and students. We're fostering, when we talk about exploring, it's not just our students, it's all of us exploring and being empowered, and therefore excelling as a team. A further process was taken by that 2030 team to really connect the mission intentionally with the vision, and to really look at these items. They're not intended to be static things. Often when you create vision statements and mission statements, they end up on a wall, taped to a wall, or in a binder trophy someplace. I can tell you that the statements, the things that we talked about tonight, is found alive and well in our curriculum work, and challenged in the layering of the work that we do there. So when we thought about the work moving forward, we looked at the dense document of the IT and what that meant for us, and how do we prioritize? How do we create action steps? What is it we want to do to achieve that vision, to go about our work? There was a process, again, affinity, hours of conversation by 37 plus people going through, and these are the areas that were ended up being tagged. And these are the things that if we do think about and we work on, that we will move forward as a district to achieve that vision and start to create pockets of actionable plan, actionable work, right? Because you can't say, well, how do you excel? And you need to, how do you empower? What does that look like in our curriculum? What does that look like in our daily work? We start to make sure we don't lose these compartments or these ideas. You can also right away notice the first two, they were up there intentionally. They were prioritized. And we've spent many resources, hours and money into making sure that we move forward on that curriculum and that academic and learning of our students. You can also see the beginning nuances of some of the teams that now exist. What I love about the work that we were doing at the time, we were talking about social, emotional, and behavioral and wellness before the pandemic as a priority item. We had a good group of people that already went prior to the pandemic with a mindset ready to address social, emotional needs, and then, pandemic hits and we were in a good spot to say, okay, we've been working on this, and let's move forward with this. And now that's really some application work that came through the pandemic. Technology was one that was talked about very much, as you can imagine, but it was determined to be such a topic that transcends so many different things. It's not an action item in itself, but rather an item that applies to all aspects of our work when it comes to efficiencies and preparing students for the world beyond our walls. Adult learning was not just about, it was more about the professional learning of our employees, but it also did touch upon what is it we do in the community. There was conversations about that. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that out loud, but it wasn't, it was more about the professional learning of our people. And the facilities, of course, was a constant conversation. And we said the health and wellness once again. So we took that planning, we created some goals based on those thoughts and those ideas as a group with the Board of Education and through the Horsets 2030 team. Had to take that vision, mission, and value statements as approved and moved all the way through the board. Created those strategic areas, and those were the four that were, so these are our priorities right now. To move forward to achieve our goals, the state had just released the changing of standards and assessments. We knew that curriculum had to be at the top of our list so that our teachers felt prepared to address the new assessments that were going to be released by the state. Necessarily. This was about, hey, this building has this person coming in and doing this great activity. Can we get a similar activity in the academics and see that in our other buildings? It wasn't about going out. We already had been doing that. We had teams and committees that did days of going out and doing engagement and volunteer-based. That's not what this was at the time. This was about the community's engagement in our instruction. CDC. The work that we do with that group, so that's how do we enhance that and bring businesses to work in tandem with our curriculum. So these kind of just encapsulate, kind of give you an idea. There is on the webpage the full format of each of these goals as of 2017-18, when we began them and what they look like, and where we're heading as a district. I won't spend much time on that, but I just want to give they took the vision statements and the mission and they embedded it into those goals. You will see words from the vision statement bound throughout those goals. This was not done as, these are all overlapping topics. There was always a very intentional effort to do it right, to have this intertwining work. Nothing should have been done in a silo. If it didn't relate back to the priorities that we heard from those 37 members and the board had heard about in their updates and the community had an opportunity to engage in. That was a lot, but that's where we were. So I just wanted, if there's any clarity that's needed prior to moving on to where we are going and where we are now.
I have a question.
And maybe this dovetails off what you just said, Tony, but as you said, this is kind of where we were, this was the planning, and then the pandemic came, and then it has had all sorts of impacts. So are we looking at potential changes to these goals or adding goals related to the impacts of the pandemic? Or how are we reconciling what we've been through with what the goals were prior to that occurring?
Sure, and the way we'll approach it, we'll get to that. If you don't mind, I'll do a deep dive when we get to the reflection, which are the last piece of it, so kind of like the chronological. You're absolutely right. There's two things to that. It's not just the pandemic damage, it's the, and you should review your plans on a regular basis anyway, so they're not binder trophies collecting dust. So this was great work done, but how many years ago? I think it's what has changed, what is still good, what should we continue with, what should we reset or rethink about, and what's the new spirit of the times. So what is altered? Where should we shift priorities? Like I said earlier, lot of priority in the curriculum. That is going to continue, but are we going to get to a nice spot to be able to that we're saying, okay, we got that in place, what's next? What now can we add to the capacity of our staff? You'll recall in previous board meetings over the last couple of years, always a concern to talk about the staff capacity, right? What can they give? Because we're not going to do this as administrators. This is their work. We just want to support it and make sure that they get to that end goal to support students. So working alongside them, but we got they have we all have these primary jobs. How do we just align them better and get them all pointing in the right direction? So I think we're ready to say as a system, okay, are these still the priorities? Not just because of the pandemic, just because it's time to re-ask the question. Yes.
So on the, whoever thought they needed one of these. So on the page of educational areas, priority goal number 1, what was your process in selecting the word ensure there? Because to me that implies it will definitely, most certainly happen. And maybe it does all the time, but it seems to me we've gotten a few letters from the state saying that it didn't happen. So,
sure, but it's the goal. It's not a past tense like, hey, we already did this. It's like, this is where we need to head. We need to ensure our students are consistently exceeding state standards. I guess it's a forward-thinking goal to achieve.
but doesn't the word to ensure mean it shall happen by definition? Isn't that what the word means, or do I not?
Yes.
I guess well, I mean, it's asked for.
Bill, the lights went off.
Oh, you're good.
My light's on, but my sound.
Nobody's phone.
I mean, I understand the aspirational nature of it, but
It just seems to me the choice of the word implies that it will definitely happen. So, that's an observation.
I'm sure, I mean, forgive me, I don't know the conversation about that word from 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm guessing though, Warren, it's a statement of definitive, because what else, we could have said, we'll strive. And we often see goals that say that, but it seems weak, to be honest with you, to say strive, because it gives you an out. If we hold each other to a level of accountability to say, no, we're really out of passion. You're not going to find an educator that wouldn't agree with that. Let's try to get there.
I agree, so then what happens if it doesn't happen?
what question should the board ask then if you don't meet that standard?
Should be asking, what do we do better? How do we do it better? And we're reflecting on how we do that better.
Don't we always ask that question?
Yes, because we're reflecting people in our practice. So then the antithesis is to remove the goal, which doesn't make much sense.
No, it's not.
I just question the use of the word, that's all, but obviously the committee felt strongly about it and used it, so.
I mean, like, now, Warren.
You don't need to.
That hurts. That hurts. Priority goal for community engagement. You say the district will increase the percentage of students participating in learning activities. It seemed, I read that one way, students participating in learning activities. Was it ever looked at the other way as far as bringing community partners into the curriculum, into the school?
Yeah, no, excellent point, yes. These are pared down, they're actually like a paragraph each. I didn't want to take up that many, so we worked, my team and I, to get into that, but you're absolutely right. The conversation, we saw both ways. How does the business come in, and how do we send students out? Which to opportunities. I think the difficulty we sometimes run is, like the capacity we see in our educators and our administrators, was the capacity of a business, a for-profit business, to give us that time, right? And to make sure when we asked, it was with intentionality and specificity, right? If you're going to come in and you're going to give up time to what your company's paying, we've got to be respectful of that and make sure it's very targeted. And so that was a big conversation a conversation had during 2030 network, right? Because respect for them and what they do for the community and in a for-profit business.
Anything to add on that 2030 piece?
Thomas?
No, move on.
So thinking about now and what we've been doing in the spirit of 2030 and the continued work, the New York State had in 2018 put out the plan of action about the multi-tiered system of supports. Myself and I believe 2 of the principals here had gone to a training where we first saw the Department of Health and the Department of Education started to work in tandem in 2018 about this work. And we went to that and brought some of those ideas back, and we started to become that wellness group, that cultural piece of our district. So this is not new. New York State is still to release its roadmap for the multi-tiered system of supports. Many of you, nearly all of you, are familiar with the academic MTSS. That's your tiered interventions of academics. That's where your first tier intervention is happening in the classroom. A teacher addresses minor things to address deficiencies or gaps in students' learning in the moment or because of a result on a test. That first tier of intervention. Right? A second tier is, okay, a little bit deeper. The student needs more assistance, might require additional supports in academics. And your third tier, you're getting to where the student might be being pulled out for other services or leaving the instructional class, being in a different, least restrictive environment. Right? So we're very much familiar with the tiering in academic, but when we discussed this in 2018, it was also in the social, emotional, and behavioral. What does that look? What does a tiered intervention look like there to address those students? And we see that a student is...
We talked about the invisible backpack for years and what that looks like to us. And what do they bring back in their social emotional? What do they need assistance that's affecting their academics? And how is it manifesting in behaviors as well? So from that work, we talked about the portion of the graduate and the curriculum blueprint. And these are concrete ways to put into practice the, it's kind of weird feedback. To put into practice the multi-tiered system of supports to start now, including that behavioral, social, emotional, as well as the academic we're all familiar with.
So we'll just go into a little bit of depth on each of those.
So the question is, what is a multi-tiered system of supports? As Tony explained, it is something that is coming out from New York State, but we did get a jump on this prior to the pandemic. We were working on this. But really, the belief is grounded in the whole child and thinking about not just academic needs, but what do they need socially and behaviorally. So really thinking about what does that look like? How can we provide that support as well as accelerate students throughout this? It is evidence-based, and we were just initially, right before the pandemic, learning about it and researching it and starting to get our ideas together, and also recognizing all the great things that we're currently doing to support this, but how can we look at it cohesively as a district? So bringing us to the why MTSS, and that's the acronym that we use. First of all, it was so deeply rooted in the purpose 2030 to think about the wellness and academics for all students and all staff. And that is something that stayed alive through all of this process. We really wanted to think about how can we best meet the needs of all students, and what does that look like? What practices do we currently have in place that would reassure that we're doing that? So it really made us reflect and think about those things. And then of course the pandemic happened, which was the positive light. It just really highlighted the need to move forward with this approach. Even though we still haven't got received that framework yet from New York State, we were still moving forward because this would work for all kids. It's an intentionality of tiered interventions in all of those 3 areas, and then we will be looking forward to seeing the framework from New York State support us.
I can start it. Yeah.
So is that something that's supposed to be released at some point soon, this New York State framework?
It was
Yes.
supposed to be this past summer, but we're still waiting.
Okay.
We've seen the implementation in states around us. We have a feeling, we understand where it's going. We're actually in conversations with some organizations that have worked with those other states to put it into practice. So we would expect New York State to sooner or later release that to us, and we're going to be prepared and then some for that. The Portrait of a Graduate is a great exercise that we did where you close your eyes and you think about all the things a graduate should be able to do, making sure we get everything we need so you're successful after you leave our walls. We would often use this college and career readiness, or just career readiness, because often college is the goal to be career readiness. So what does it look like to be outside these walls, and what do you need to do? So this questionnaire here, what knowledge, skills, habits, and values do you want our HCSD graduates to walk away with, is asked of all those different groups. And each group went through an affinity process, looked at other groups' works and added to it. And it's something we'll continue to add to as we move through, moving forward. But we have a process to go through, and I'll let Tiffany explain who did that and how it came to fruition and where it stands now. But it was within the intent of, okay, let's just make sure we're saying we need them to do these things, but where are we helping them be able to do those things? It's one thing to say it, but now we have to place it someplace.
So we did, I don't know if you remember, some of you were secure for this time, but we did ask we asked students, we asked the school board, we asked our curriculum advisory team, the professional learning team, as well as when they started the wellness, we asked those committee members, we had asked our instructional leaders, as well as any curriculum team that started. In fact, we just started physical education and science this summer and asked these same questions to them. What do we want our students to walk away with in first ed? And this is really, really powerful because this is that unwritten curriculum piece. We want them, of course, to hit all of their ELA standards, the social studies standards, the science, but we also want them to be good humans. And what does that mean? So that is the task that we put in front of them, and everyone, I can't tell you how many post-its we had. Our curriculum advisory team actually put all of the post-its together from all of this input, including, I forgot students, we did ask students this as well. What does that look like? What do we want? And they were able to come up with 7 indicators. I will share those with you. So this can be overwhelming, we'll walk you through it. This is called a curriculum blueprint. So we're going to start on the right-hand side. You'll see that academic discipline side. So this is where we are starting to write our curriculum. We dove in with ELA because it's so huge first. We also we're in the works of math. We started music. We, just I said, this summer worked with physical education and the secondary sciences. We worked together to work with special education to start to align their resources and align it with general education curriculum, as well as the social workers. They started to unpack those social emotional standards. So that is the right side. We asked all of them, what does that portrait of a graduate look like? Through there, we're developing the curriculum. We are developing performance tasks, bigger, deeper rooted understandings that gets to the heart of the unit. So they're going through that process and spending a lot of time aligning their essential questions with the standards and unpacking all of those. That is the academic side of things, that disciplinary side. On the left-hand side, you'll see the transdisciplinary. And this is where that portrait of a graduate work comes into place. All of the input indicated 7 areas for portrait of a graduate. It's independence, collaboration, wellness, citizenship, critical thinking, communication, and creativity. That is what stood out with all of that input, what we want our students to not only walk away with those disciplinary skills, but also those transdisciplinary skills. So we're not done with this work yet. You can see this is huge work, but it's all coming together. And we will continue to do that work throughout all of our curriculum teams, as well as the work of all of our leaders in the district as well. We're going to bring those together and develop some cornerstone performance tasks. Examples of that could be like we have in place right now. They're doing the mock interviews in 8th grade. What a great cornerstone performance task that we currently have in place. It is not only doing social studies science standards, but we're also producing students to apply their skills in an authentic way. So that is the goal of a curriculum blueprint, is to make sure that it is all aligned and we are connecting all of the pieces so it's not just in silo.
So often those in the right side of the academic disciplines and thinking about their standards, they look at some of those items under the course of the graduate, like, you know, we do a citizenship that's covered in our social studies curriculum as part of those standards. Critical thinking, we see that in several different standard strands. Communication, heavy in the ELA, but we see that in some of the writing we see across curriculum. Creativity, we often just erroneously just put in art and think that's where it belongs, and it doesn't. But where we teach independence, there's no New York State standard on independence, but yet it's something we say we want our students to be. So what does that look like? How do we do it with intentionality? If this is important of all those different adults we asked and students and all those different teams, then we better be intentional about achieving that goal and what that looks like. You know, we say we want our students to collaborate, but again, where do we teach that? How do we teach that? What does it look like? Let's be intentional. So you can see it drives from the top, from the vision, the mission, the value statements, and any goals that we derive as a system. And then we think about, okay, what does that look like in the long haul, and how does it divide, what are those transdisciplinary, that transcend each of those things, combined to our academic and find its way down into those cornerstones and some of our units and our lessons and our interventions with students. Those in the academic or the educational world are looking at it, that's a lot. That's a lot of work, and it is. We've been engaged in it for a couple of years now. And we continue to layer the work as we go to achieve this goal. Should have took a pause there on any questions about the curriculum blueprint or the portrait of graduate and the MTS system and how it ties all together. Yes, Liz. Give it a shot.
Okay. More of looking at the phrase I really liked was producing good people. Have you looked at all at any diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff that can then support the students more heavily as our climate changes?
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that in this reflection piece, because since 2017-18, that's been something that's to come out of wellness that wasn't intentional in our work then, but now from the state and from other areas has become, okay, how does this fold into that, right? We better consider, again, a reflection piece.
Okay.
So as we reflect, we're going to continue that curriculum development, implementation, and review and revise. Tiffany and our team has put out a lot of information just recently on ELA. We're moving into nearly finalizing some math work, still piloting some things there with our teachers and seeing what works and how we build this course as curriculum. That is just amazing work. I can't emphasize that enough. The teacher input and the administrative work to complete these tasks and really not challenge ourselves with those transdisciplinary items. We'll obviously continue those professional learning things in those 3 different cycles. What does the individual want to do? What do they want to go excel at? And to encourage that, what does the team or small group need? And what is the district looking to accomplish as a system? We do need an evaluation of alignment of committees. We need to look at those 4 original committees and think about them again and say, okay, what was their purpose and does it still hold? Are there other committees that has been talked about and how do they fold into this with intentionality so they're not just out there on the island by themselves? And to Liz, your question, develop understandings and how do initiatives support 8 versus 2030? Where do we insert some of the work we're doing in EIA and what does that look like? Set some outcomes to our work. As Warren was pointing out, let's say here's where we are. Let's get back to once a year. Sean, myself, and before me would talk about here's our high stakes assessments and here's where we look at the state report card. Here's our accountability. But we also know that we have other systems of assessment that are more formative or been summative during the school year that really tell us a lot more about our students and what it looks like measuring against the curriculum. And then we need to visualize this work. Something we talked about in the 2030 group was, what does this look like? There was images being drawn then about logos. It's not a new idea. Those conversations came up then about a logo or a seal or something to mark this new work and to say this is important. So to answer your question earlier, I think I covered it. I just want to make sure that I'm good.
take like an exit survey or interview so that we could gather if they feel like they?
Okay. Chris isn't here to help me remind me what exactly we do with our counselors, school counselors with them. There's also attempts in postgraduate work as well, but we don't know the results there. Every once in a while, I think it's every 5 to 7 years, there's an attempt to reach out to graduates in certain areas to see what they're saying. That's been discussed as far as, are you relating to the portion of graduate or?
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Yes,
going
so
to
I
say,
think that's part of the work that we're still finishing up on that left-hand side. Like, we need to make sure we have those cornerstones. How are we truly showing that we're doing what we said we're set out to do? So that is part of the development that we're going to continue working through this year.
there was several student groups at different levels that were asked about what they think they should be able to do when they graduate. But we didn't ask a graduate at that time. Yes.
Okay, I'm going back to the priority goal and the word ensure.
Okay.
Having been on the committee and knowing how hard our really worked to get just the right words. So when I read that, I don't know if I change the position of the words a little bit, but to me it means that the district will ensure that our students are going to have the opportunity to exceed by implementing this curriculum. And as a former teacher, Warren, you and I know we can do everything possible. Are we going to get the result we love to have? We hope so, but not all the time. But I think ensure that we're going to, as a district, we are going to provide that. We're going to provide the best curriculum we can to help our students exceed the standards. That's just the way I interpret it.
Someone remembers the conversation. I was trying to remember the conversation, so I think I did.
There was a lot of time spent by the teachers. I just sat back and listened to a lot over the wordage, and they wanted to make it exactly right. And you used the word passion, and that was very obvious in the meetings. They were really into this, even after a full day of teaching.
Yeah, 4-hour sessions at night.
Well, I think your use of the word opportunity makes that statement completely different, and I certainly would support that.
I think that's why we're all here. We want to give the Horsett students the best opportunity.
And our bar should be not just what the state minimum is. That was a lot of conversation, I do remember that.
Yes. Better than.
So as we move forward, we're going to talk about the new accountability system in our next meeting together. It's changed. There used to be a MIP system. The system has changed, and how we're not going to get into the metrics. Sean and I each went to 3-day trainings on it. There's no way to encapsulate it in a short presentation, but we'll give you the gist of how we are held now accountable by New York State and what that looks like in those particular areas. Oops. And then we'll also try to show ahead of time some data sets in your hands so we don't do them for the first time at the meeting. We traditionally do some trend averages in grade 3 grade assessments, math and ELA, show some science data, the Regents exams, graduation rates 4, 5, and 6 year, which we have great results. We have resilient students and staff that work to get them to the 6 year, and comparative data with other districts, both financially bang for the buck, as well as the assessment comparative data of the districts. Not just local, by the way, but also districts that spend similar. We'll look to see if we can find those charts. Say, okay, here's a district in New York State with similar demographics and similar expenditures, and here's how they compare on these assessments as well. So we used to be able to produce that with our old IDEX system. We are now with the new system of data, and we'll see if we can produce the same. That's what we're going to do for you next time. Are we on the right track?
Board?
Tony, is there any way to see the graduation rate of those students with disabilities that extend
Yeah, that's what we call the 4, 5, and 6 year graduation rate, yeah. So those that go on to that final year. And if memory serves me right, we have very resilient students and staff that work and continue on to that point. So later on tonight, you're going to hear there are some issues specifically with students with disabilities and our works there, and a DSIP plan that had to be formulated, a comprehensive plan to address some specifics in our graduation rate. But so we'll make sure to highlight it at that point if there's any questions, and then again next time we meet.
Just so the board wants to, just so that the board understands that data can run rich, and it can run deep, and it can run in various directions. Our presentations scheduled over the course of the year will break that apart. So you may not get every piece because we would be here 4, 5, 6 hours breaking it down. So as we are going through, if there's something, let us know. And that's how we're stepping through each of our Board of Education meetings. So each meeting, we will have some type of presentation on our curriculum program or the curriculum data set into specific areas as well as the general. So next week, next month is the culminating kickoff of starting the data conversations throughout the whole year. Okay, any other questions for Tony or the educational program? Thank you, Nancy.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. So I just want to thank you for doing that. I think it was really great to get everybody grounded on the work that had been done and the plans moving forward. I think, particularly if anybody in the community is watching this at home, it's really important. We have focused so much of our talk time over the past couple of years on like Tony said, the purchasing order and the construction, which is all great. But equally as great, and even more great, right, is all this work that's happening on the academic side, which has all been happening all along with everything we've been doing from a construction standpoint. We just haven't communicated it as broadly. So I think this was a really great start to get everybody grounded. I hope there's people at home that are watching it as well, because it is really important to see how the district is investing in the educational future of all of our students. So thank you. I'm really excited to start looking at the data. I love when Sean presents data, so I'm looking forward to that. And so thank you very much for putting that together. I think it was very valuable for us to kind of bring it back and make sure that it's broadly communicated. Okay, so moving on, superintendent report.
I would like to say I will keep this brief, but it's the first meeting of the year, so I apologize. But we have several things to cover in my report. First of all, the opening of the school year is, I would say over the past 3 years, nothing short of amazing. But this year brings a little special tone to it, just because of the fact that we started with our curriculum, our staff, before the Labor Day for the first time. And I'm happy to report to the board as well as to my fellow colleagues that a whole different feeling tone was about the district at the start, and a lot of positivity and feeling of preparedness versus coming in the day after Labor Day, having all the meetings, and then all of a sudden starting the next day. So I want to thank our faculty and staff for adjusting to that. I hope that will continue, because I think it gave many positives to everybody. As we start off, we have to look back and reminisce from last year's transportation issues that were very, very much not the way that we should open. And we started off this year, and I'm happy to report, although there are bumps and bruises along the way as we transfer to a brand new leadership at the Transportation Center, a brand new routing system that is not fully installed at the Transportation Center, that compared to a year ago, we were over 30 minutes improved from a year ago on the first day. We were over 45 minutes improved on the second day, and then it just gradually started to be adjusted. Some parents do have difficulties, and they've expressed their concerns, and we understand that. I want to commend Rich and his staff for handling them. It's not easy to get through to over 4,000 people when maybe 1,000 of them called. But they did so, they stayed on the weekends, and I'm happy to report that I think as early as yesterday or the day before, all of our runs were, for the most part, on their scheduled times. That usually takes 2 to 3 weeks, and as we go through next year, so that the community knows, there's always a late start, but next year there is a guarantee, and you can go back and read this on the recording. All busing information that we have at the time in the first week of August will be disseminated to all residents. Residents will have 2 weeks to help clean it up. What will really help is those residents that do not need transportation, letting the bus garage know. That makes our first day even better. And then it will be resituated and put on with school tool and all the information, that there will be another 2-week period for them to work it out before we even start. And I know that the transportation department's looking forward to that, and if it causes us to have to put buses out on the road to make sure that we ensure our new routing system's working effectively, that is something we're committed to. So I want to thank the parents for understanding and patience. In most districts, it takes 4 to 5 weeks to settle out. We are only at the end of day 8, and it's settling out with some adjustments still coming. So I want to thank Rich, all your staff and everything, as well as the principals in the buildings for all their hard work. In addition to last meeting, we talked about sporting event fees. So we were trying to come up with a new way, and then all of a sudden the fellow district said, free for everybody. So guess what? This year, we're free for everybody. But we do have to understand that there's a long-term growth. So we had some debate about how could we do it, how could we get some funds, because other districts are getting funds from their gates and so forth. That I think this year would be free. We're proposing that next year we are going to probably provide anybody that wants it, that is a Horseheads resident, senior citizen, student of a Horseheads Central School District resident over by summer, a free pass for next year too. But we will also have a gate for anybody that does not have that pass. And then in the thing that's 23-24 and 24-25, we will have a pass purchasing structure for either a season or a whole year for community members to get some discount, but then we go into a regular fee structure in that year for both home and away. Does that sound like what the board was asking me to try to develop?
Yeah.
Feel good, comfortable with that, a 3-year phase back in plan?
Yes.
We are all set, so thank you very much. Let's see. Just so the board knows, our first project in the second referendum is the completion of the stadium team rooms and the music room. That is just waiting final approval at the state level, and we are ready to go out to bid as soon as possible. This construction would potentially be taking place, if everything goes as planned, somewhere around November, with the potential completion by September of next year. It would impact a little bit of graduation because we'd be under construction, but I've been assured by our construction manager that it's nothing that we wouldn't be able to handle, and graduation will be in the stadium according to the plans that we've used over the past 2 years. More information will be coming, but because it's weather dependent, we will do exactly what we've done over the past 2 years. Start with the first best day that we can. That graduation will be on that evening, and that is starting with Wednesday, moving to a Thursday, moving to a Friday, with Saturday picking the date and time, or rain and shine on that date, because we do have kids that will leave for the military usually that next week, and we want to make sure no matter what, everybody has a chance to graduate with their class. So we will get more information out for that, as that is something that needed to be finalized. Just so that the school community knows, there's a lot of work going on in the second referendum. We had already indicated that this year would be the year that the district, for all intents and purposes, would be working on what's known as a complete, full 5-year district census. What that means is we are trying to identify every student that is potentially going to enter into school, starting with next year, going out 5 years potentially. Some of those kids will be just arriving in Horseheads maybe over the next year. But the reason why we want that is that helps to identify where busing patterns, residency patterns are, as we enter into the 25-26 school year of moving to 3 elementary schools. Those boundaries need to be developed, and the only way we can do that is through transportation and knowing where every potential student would reside. So it's going to take about a year. We will probably have to bring in some outside agencies to help do that and contract with them. Ms. Bizzetti's already working on that, either through RFP or through professional services. So pay attention to that over the next couple of months as we really need to get started. Our hope is to try to complete that census by the end of this year or middle of next year, then to work with our transportation system to try to develop the projected boundaries of evening out 3 schools. That target date is September 1st, 2025. We will still be in construction of the elementary schools, but we will have 3 elementary schools that will take care of all the students in their new configurations. In addition, we have a couple of things that are going on for the board. We have the New York State School Boards Association Convention coming up. It is almost that time of the year where you have to take that big legal book, go home and look and say, we agree with NYSBA and we want to support their position, or as a board, we want to go against NYSBA and this is why. In order to do that, we have to have that discussion in an open board meeting that comes in October. The resolution book, I think, has been sent out. We'll send it out again. What I would ask is, as we've done always, the district has a preference that we support everything NYSBA says they're going to support. We reject everything that NYSBA says they're going to reject, at least at this point. And if you're okay with that, you don't have to say anything. If you feel the board needs to have a discussion on a specific item, forward that item number and resolution to me. And then at our agenda meeting, we'll talk with the board officers and set that up for October, right before we go. And that will be the one piece that we'll have a discussion on. In order to do that and have a say at the NYSBA convention, the board also has to select a delegate who will represent the board during the open session of NYSBA, as well as an alternate. This year, the session is not connected to the convention. It's actually doing it by Zoom, which I'm surprised because we've been told that they can't do that anymore. But right now, I think they had it approved, so it will be for this year, and I think it will be the last. So, before I continue with mine, is there a member of the board that would like to be this elected representative delegate? And is there one that would like to be the alternate in case something ever happens to the delegate? Don't all jump at once.
Well, we should also ask Tom too.
Yes.
Or something there as well.
But right now, is there anyone that would like to? Because we have to register that person. When do we have to register that person by, Ms. Clark?
I believe that it was before October.
It's coming up.
Oh,
Coming up.
yeah, it must be a delegate. You can register your delegate here by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, October 12th. So our next board meeting is not until after that point.
Okay, well, we'll ask.
Oh, I'm not done, but we won't have another meeting before that point, so board business has to act now. Yeah, Doug has done it in the past. Doug has not stated that he's going to NYSBA this year, I don't know. We don't have to, I believe, this year. I know Kevin, Liz, and Christine are going to the conference so far this year.
But we don't have to decide tonight, so if we have board members that aren't here, it's not something that we vote on.
It's not something that needs to be board action because it's volunteer, so if you can get me a name before that time or get the district clerk the name of who's the delegate, who's the alternate,
And-
we'll be happy to
and Terry,
register that.
when is the Zoom session?
It's, I gave he's got it. Just the date of
The orientation, oh, here's one of the things. We can register the person up to the 12th. However, the orientation is on Thursday, October 6th at 12 p.m. or Wednesday, October 12th at 4 p.m. So whoever we register, they have to go to the orientation center. They must be able to attend the business meeting virtually on Monday, October 17th at 4 p.m. So you're losing a night of your life.
That's a way to encourage people to volunteer.
For anybody that's been there, Dan, you've been there, it can take a little while, doesn't it?
All right.
Okay, so if you can get that, that's great.
Yep.
So I think we've got the resolution covered and everything, and we'll be ready for the next.
So I will follow up with both Doug and Tom to see if either one of them are interested. If not, I will reach back out, or if any of you think about it and decide that you want to, let me know. And we'll figure it out.
Yep. Just so that you know, if the board does not have a delegate, that does not hurt. You just accept the position of whatever happens at the meeting.
Right.
So that you know. Okay. Just 1 second. Just so that the public knows, because we've got our huddle camera up and running, our wonderful communication director has put out new links on our website, as well as it's on our scrolling screen, and has been there, that you can link to the camera and select the site that you want to, so that you can, from your own home, watch a football game, watch a soccer game that's covered by Huddle. A lot of other school districts have this on their link as well. One of the things that athletically, we are now back open. We haven't had to deal with this a lot, but now fundraising is starting to begin again. Because of that, there has to be some district control to oversee fundraising and the amount of fundraising that's out there, and utilizing the school district's name on behalf of our students for their program. In the near future, our athletic director and most likely our business administrator, who is now looking at me quite amused, will be having a meeting with all booster groups and those people that are raising funds to ensure that they understand why we have to be very careful about it, why we have to make sure that we're not stepping on everybody else's toes, and why there will be a form put back into place ensuring that fundraising is going on, how it's accountable. Because oftentimes schools will get called and say, hey, this child showed up, knocked on my door, was selling this. I didn't get this, or something, and maybe the school might not know anything because it's somebody else. Our obligation is to protect the children, protect the booster clubs and organizations, but also to protect our community. So that will be coming shortly. Did that make the census project? Pretty good. One issue of topic that sort of arose this week on social media, we don't usually do that, but it did provide some opportunity for reflection. At the county level, a county legislator, I believe, posted information on the actions of the county legislature of approving and getting funding for certain grants for the Chemung County Sheriff's SRO and school patrol officers. That is dealing with material supplies and weaponry for those officers, and that it is even included that this is to help the participating schools in Chemung County. So that people know, the Horsehead Central School District does not participate with the Chemung County Sheriff's Department. We have our own SRO program in conjunction with the Village of Horseheads that is under contract in all of our schools and will remain in all of our schools. We have a wonderful working relationship with them and the towns, and we have people that are making connections that it would be a devastation to a lot of students that if this program were to cease, and we have just recently expanded it and we are continuing. So I just want to assure the community that those information out there, if you hear it and you're thinking what's going on, please just give my office a call. Usually we will give you sort of more information, or we may not even know about it, but we will find out the information and get it back to you. So sometimes it causes a little panic or a little bit of consternation because people just don't know and it might affect their own senses. We understand that. We'll always try to help everybody through it. Sometimes we're the ones that create the panic and we don't mean to, but we want to try to make sure that we're straightforward and clear. In addition, one last thing the board has, this is not out for public consumption, but we've talked about it back in June. The board reaffirmed back in August that we want a district image. I told the board that I'd bring back sort of a rough draft of a potential process as well as a communication device for looking at the district imaging, also what my assistant superintendent, Mr. Gill, talked, which is part of the Horseheads 2030 project. And the one thing that we wanted to make people very much aware of, and I think it's right in the document, are we changing the name from Blue Raiders? No, that is not the board's position. They made that very clear. Why are we doing this? One is we're doing it to try to make sure that we have a consistent image, representation of what is the best representation of the Horseheads Blue Rating. In addition, there's potential timelines in there. Those are just rough. So if the board could look at that, because ultimately it is the board's final decision. If the board could look at that, make any suggestions, just send them on to me. I'll try to pretty it up and then we'll go through a final process. But the process would not be set on just the board. It would not be set on the superintendent. It would be inclusive of our student body, our community of Horsehead Central School District, to help us figure out what is the best way. It could be one thing, it could be another. The superintendent, the board, just cares that we properly and legally reflect the image of Horseheads Blue Raiders, and give something of pride and distinction for our community. As you can see, just from tonight's presentation from Mr. Gill, there are several different images that have been used in the past. But unfortunately, they are all images of the horses. And we are known as Horseheads, but we are the Horseheads Blue Raiders, not necessarily the Horseheads horses. But it doesn't mean they can't be merged, and if somebody can give us suggestions, design concepts, as well as a legitimate written rationale of why whatever they're proposing is the best image to reflect Horseheads Blue Raiders, I think that adds complexity to it and allows the board that discussion. The ultimate work will be based, I believe, on my recommendation is some type of committee across the district that will be guiding it, which I look at it as it's athletically weighted, it's high school secondary, it's middle school weighted, it's elementary weighted in one way or another. It can be used in all ways. And I'm going to use my administrative colleagues as part of that, as well as possibly I'm looking at maybe a couple of our student representatives to be also the student's voice in there as well. The big thing is the more, the better outcome, hopefully, to bring back to the board, where the board makes the final decision on how that would be selected. So if you can, look that over, send me some emails and so forth. The timeline that's in there is just like a rough timeline.
Just repeating from last meeting, I just want to make sure that it's of the board of you, Tom, that we're looking, once this mascot logo image is created, that it is going to be looked at to be trademarked and copyrighted, that it's a wholly owned image by the district.
I have no problem if that's what the board would like, and we would go through our legal processes with our law firms. Any questions on that, please? Yes.
I don't know if you can answer this, but is there a rationale to have it trademarked and copyrighted? Just seems like an expense if we need to do that.
I don't know if it's an expense. I'm not the lawyer in the room now. I'm short one, but I got the other one, but I know he knows corporate law. Copyright is relatively straightforward. The question is the contractual arrangements you can enter in for the reproduction of the image as well. One of the things the board got, Ms. Bizzetti, is there was this, please forgive me, I don't know if we brought it to the board yet, this licensing or agreement that was signed in the past by a former AD committing that the image could be produced and put out there for sale, and then we get a check.
So if the board recalls, we had to amend the agenda a meeting or two ago because there was a check from a provider for royalties for selling our images. I reached out to them to help me understand how this came to be, and it was an agreement, I believe, in 2018, signed by a prior administrator.
No, it was from before I was here, signed by a prior.
Right, 2013.
2013, I thought you said 18.
No, 2013. And I believe some of the language was they had exclusive rights to our imaging. The Ohio connection to that I'm trying to dig into and figure out what that would seem to be. So.
Yeah, so we have a legal obligation. First of all, we have to notify them. They officially have an invalid contract because it was not gone through the proper legislative approval of the school board. In addition, the individual is not, no individual is allowed to sign a contract except myself, as well as the board president. So any contract that's signed by anybody else is actually invalid. And that's always been the case because of the legislative authority. The problem is we don't disagree with that type of image, but by doing this and refining that image, we can work with our local vendors to have some promotional materials and the people that do our uniforms, our shirts, our fundraising opportunities. But it also gives us a little control, and those funds, if we raise any funds, need to be targeted back to our student programs. That would be our intent.
From my perspective, the other thing is the legal use of the logo can't be, it could be more, who can be better going after, such as illegal use. If someone makes a fraud account on a TikTok channel or something like that, this is going to give you more teeth into being able to fight that, or unlicensed use, not of the logo itself, but of a representation of what the Horset Central School District is.
Yes. Other questions? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to commend our administrators for opening the school years, Mike as well, to move our buildings from where they were. He knows what I mean. Every administrator, I think anybody that's toured our buildings, from where they were 2 days and a week before school to where they are now. Our administrators working with their organizations and everybody always tries to do more and more for the students, but now that we're outside of the COVID realm, their activities are ramping up and they are the leaders of their building and they will lead any activity that are on property. And it's a partnership, and they make that partnership very much the biggest thing around. And we're looking forward to many different activities that the students will be doing, not only at the elementary, but the intermediate, the middle school, and the high school level. And I think most of our administrators would say they're just glad not to have anything else holding over their head. And we want to keep that positive relationship with our parents, our staff, and our students moving forward for the Horset Central School District. So, great opening, everybody, and thank you very much. Thank you, Board of Education.
Okay. All right, moving on to the board report. I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of what Dr. Douglas just said. I just want to thank everybody in the district for a smooth opening. Welcome everybody back to a brand new school year. Everything that I've heard, it's been wonderful, and it's just nice to see the energy, nice to see people out and about, and thank you for all the work that everybody put into getting our school year start off on the right foot. So I'm looking forward to a really excellent year. We have two committee reports, so audit report.
Yeah, the audit committee met Monday of this week. Tom Zuber, who is here tonight presenting the audit, spoke, went over the executive summary. The key highlight there was the big drop in the cash was all related to the transfer to the capital project. So no concern. It looks bad on the paper, but it was planned. It was going to leave the books. We also spent quite a bit of time looking at the external audit, corrective action plan. There was an update on the school lunch fund. All these documents will be approved later on the finance part of the meeting. Third thing we looked at was we looked at the draft of the extra classroom activities internal audit. This was done in the spring by TST BOCES. We got a preliminary draft in the spring. This was a finalized copy, and we reviewed that for approval tonight. And we also spent time looking at the corrective action plan regarding that. Everything will be completed this fall, and the latest item will be completed around October 31st of this year. And the final thing was the state had gone back to us regarding our audit regarding network access controls. And they wanted a little more details. Katie has provided that, and we will approve that tonight so then she can forward it back to the state. That was it.
Okay, thank you. Policy committee, Doug's not here, so would somebody else on the committee you'd like to?
So item 703, policy committee report, we met on September 8th. We had several policies for first readings. We talked about potential new policy X, just because it's unnumbered at this point. titled Causing Disturbances. And this was recommended by council and to set a policy in regard to how to deal with individuals that may harass or cause disturbances toward the district. We decided to table that for further consideration in connection with the other policy about conduct on school property. We have a first reading on policy 4514. We made just minor edits to remove the words video cassettes because we're not sure that they exist anymore. And then policy 4521, teacher aides. That policy was recommended to be deleted in its entirety, not because we were getting rid of teachers' aides, but just because the roles and descriptions that they fulfill are set forth both in law and in job descriptions, etc. So there was no need to have a separate policy. And then for second readings, coming before the board this evening for approval, minor edits to policy 0201, adding the term accessibility along with the diversity, equity, and inclusion terminology. The advanced college placement is coming again before the board, no edits, and then the 4511 around textbook selection and adoption. And just one note in the minutes, it says that's coming before the board as a first reading. It should be second reading tonight. And then we talked about a couple of policies and go to the order regarding assignments of schools, students to schools and classes, and public participation at board meetings that we would review in the future. That was it.
Good, thank you. All right, moving on to our finance items for action. We have 8.02 through 8.20. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Any comments or questions on any of these?
On 8.06, and maybe this is my ignorance on this, but am I to assume that because football is not listed on either the June or July athletic student activities funds, that they are separate because of their booster clubs?
Yes. Football hasn't had a club under our umbrella in quite some time. They do have a very active booster club.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Or
So on 8.17 and 8.18, I guess more the 8.18, the corrective action plan. There was a statement there that 5 stipends did not line up with the hours that were worked, but it didn't say whether the hours were underworked or overworked. So like if you were supposed to work 40 hours and somebody worked, it didn't say whether somebody underworked and only performed 20 hours of service or overworked and did 80 hours. So could you explain that a little bit?
It's actually both scenarios. So stipends for both yearbook and marching band were reviewed. And some were found, to go in both directions. So they all need to be looked at as far as, just over the years, if things have been modernized, have the roles and procedures changed about how some of these stipend positions work, and the job description just needs to be updated. And then the flip side is, someone is working, based on a job description, more hours, there is that, that passion that teachers will bring to the table with the stipend work that they do, and oftentimes will dedicate more time than the initial piece of paper set on the stipend description. That's the minimum requirement to do the work. So we need to look at both, the under and the over, and determine, both ways. Do they need to be adjusted and how do we want to react? So we'll work in conjunction with the HT leadership to find that middle ground, to make sure that they're appropriately sized.
And it's on only the stipends that they control. The other stipends will work with whoever else we
Yeah,
need
so
to.
the ones noted are in.
Yeah. But it really applies to any stipend.
So Am I to understand that the district is open to raising stipends, or will they come in and say, we're only willing to pay for 40 and you're doing the other 40 on your own? I'm just using that as an example.
It's a process.
The district is always having those discussions. That's why we have a stipend committee that's contractually negotiated for certain ones, and the others, the district has shown, and the board has been very graciously able to approve the development of some new stipends that don't go through contracts, or the development of those programs to try to initiate things. So we've looked at, as the board has desired, how do we try to increase participation in students? That's one way, but there's also cleanup in all the other ways that people have to come forward and say, hey, I'm doing more, I should get paid more, or hey, I'm doing less. We don't get many of those lately, I get paid less, but that's what the auditors really hit. And then on top of it, the district always has a final say on whether or not they get increased or not. It's not just automatic. But we try to be fair, and I think we've had a good working relationship, and the board has certainly been very generous.
Any other comments or questions? Anything from 8.02 through 8.20? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to our personnel items. Sorry, our personnel items for action. We have 9.02 and 9.03. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on either of those?
Probably for UK. So I'm just curious, just a factual question. Item S, non-instructional stipend appointments on human resources recommendations. There's a position, and it says business office / extra classroom faculty auditor. Can you just describe what that role is intended to do? I'm not sure about the title.
Yeah, so that's also the position noted in the extra classroom corrective action plan. Faculty auditor is a position that's allowed in the New York State guidance for the management of student activity clubs, and it's an auditing position that's an internal audit process, similar to our claims auditing, where transactions are reviewed to ensure compliance in the areas of student involvement, sales tax, proper documentation, to assist in finding those areas where we're deficient and help understand why and provide the training to try to get not better compliance because everyone's doing a good job, but find those weak points and try to make it better. So when our external auditor comes in or our internal auditor comes in, we can demonstrate this is one more layer of protection we put in on our student activity money, and here's the improvement that we've made.
Okay, great.
It's sort of like the sheriff of the extracurricular funds, like the claim auditor is the sheriff of the district's funds.
Yeah, that's great. I think I just wasn't sure based on the title, but I think that's a smart thing to do considering, it can help eradicate some of the issues that we've had. So, okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor of 9.02 and 9.03 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to item 10, our miscellaneous items for action. We have 10.02 through 10.13. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on any of these? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, item 11, our board policies for second reading, 11.01 to 11.03. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions on these?
Just a clarifying question for the advanced course placement. The paragraph being added to it, so private school students, that refers to homeschooling as well. And it says what they have access to and what the district offers. I think not directly related to that, just clarification.
That policy and procedure is good because it's governed by law. Okay. We are not financially responsible. Okay. Except for the CTE piece.
comments? I would just like to make a comment. I'm really liking the fact that we added accessibility into our diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. So thank you for that. Okay, all those in favor of 11.01 to 11.03, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Okay, we have our board policies for first reading, 12.01 and 12.02, no action required, but I just want to open it up if anybody has any questions or comments for the policy committee before we bring them back next month for second reading. Warren?
Beyond the committee, I thought, maybe I misunderstood, I thought we pulled 4514 because it was tied to the regulation and it was all going to be reviewed in administrative council. Did I misunderstand that part of the conversation? I don't think.
We're still going to do that, I believe, but the policy to set the regulation will still go forward, and then we'd update it if there's any changes.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, moving on to item 13, we have to administer the oath of office for our district clerk. Mrs. Clark? Your oath of office.
Could you please stand? And raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and that you will faithfully discharge the duties of District Clerk of the Horset Central School District Board of Education according to the best of your abilities?
I do.
Please let that note that in the executive session, the oath of office is entered and signed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, we have our board member comments, item 14. Open up to everybody. Marianne?
I would like to congratulate and thank Ms. Mazzetti for all her hard work in getting us an A+ from the auditors this evening. So thank you. And your team. Thank you.
She's rough. She snatched me a lot.
Sorry, could I?
So in one of our board updates, there was a comment that we have, I believe it was 19 buses now outfitted for Wi-Fi.
Yes, that's right.
How do we envision that being deployed, and who would be able to take advantage of that?
We have Rich in the back. He doesn't like to necessarily stand up and do public speaking without a mirror in his hand. If you remember his presentation, a lot of the deployment is, remember, we had those because of also COVID. We started beforehand. But his deployment is the ability to use it as our sports runs, our extracurricular runs, if we have other sort of, how would you say, potential issues of an emergent nature from the state that says you will shut down, which I hope in my lifetime and everybody else's you'll never see again. We have that ability. But anything else to add, Rich?
No, that pretty much sums it up.
So they disseminate through our bus runs, especially for our extracurriculars that can go every which way, as well as we have the overflow based on what we needed over the past couple of years. I do have one thing for the board, just to make sure the board is aware. The county has been directed under executive order, I think it's 18 or 19, I'm not sure which one, but an executive order from the government, they like those. That all counties are supposed to submit threat assessment management plan by a certain date. I have been asked to sit on that committee along with my colleague from the Elmira schools, as well as several people from county level. I know actually Kevin Adams is there as one of the county executives representatives. And that threat assessment team has to be entered in, and it's getting to that point that they're ready with their plan, but they want to come out and let boards know. We don't usually have outside agencies come in and give presentations, because if we do, anybody, I have to start opening it up. But we're lucky, at least in this situation, that both Kevin and I are there that once they have the refined presentation, I will probably bring it to the board and just say what it is. I will tell you, as a superintendent, in the society that we have to exist across the nation, hopefully it never comes here, but we also need to be open and participate. Just like we do, see something, say something, that's what we brought to the table. That is really what the county's trying to do. We need to do a big PR press on this. I think that's probably going to be your job. But what happens is it is something that I believe our school district, I think you would, I just know you, say we want to wholeheartedly help the county make sure that our schools, our communities are protected and that we're part of that communication. So I believe we don't have to waste those individuals' time because they want to make sure we have support. I believe we do, but I'll be the representative that will present that. That way we hold the message. I think between Kevin and I, we can at least give that take. So is there anything I'm missing?
I just, from a personal standpoint, I want to bring to the board what I'm most excited about this is it's a joint effort led by the Sheriff's Office, but also co-led by Mental Health and Department of Social Services for the last 15 years, working in human services and now in administration. Very rarely we've seen Sheriff's Office or law enforcement work so hand in hand with mental health. So this team approach, or the TAM, now really merges mental health and law enforcement together as one. So it can only be further supported by people who have confidence within the system that, in my opinion, as I spoke to the Village of Forsyth's board on Monday, has to come from all tax entities within the county of Sheboygan. Hopefully when we do get to that public relations component, the support across the county will welcome that to be most successful.
And I think one of the biggest things that people have to understand is when you look at things that have happened in Uvalde or in Buffalo, one of the conversations that's always come back is, why didn't people know? Is there a place for people to give this information? Is there a place for a school district to go or a business to go? To at least find out if they've got a concern or if a concern all of a sudden arises. That's really the purpose of the TAM, the Threat Assessment Management Team. The reason being is we're all part of it. It's confidential to protect the well-being, but there's an interagency office share that if somebody moves into our school district and there's a concern from another area, and that's the intent, from one county to another, from county to school, county to business, county to municipality, mental health, trying to make that web of connections so that hopefully nothing gets missed. You can never guarantee, but that's the intent. I think from the executive order and under the leadership of Chris Moss putting together this team with all factions. Not everybody can be there, but we are working on trying to meet that goal. And I would wholeheartedly expect our district would want to support and advertise that. Does anyone see a problem with that? Thumbs up, okay? So I think we're set, we just need to get the presentation, we'll schedule that a little short and sweet. But it's really an administrative heavy laden piece that will work. And if we have anything, we'll obviously share it confidentially through executive session. I think that's it. Did I forget anything else?
Any other board members have comments?
It will come to me right after the meeting.
All right, thank you, everybody, and I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, have a wonderful evening.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for watching our September 15th Board of Education meeting. This is the first one of the year. Our meeting dates are on the website. You are welcome to come. A lot of times the location will be in the or the auditorium, but please check our website. They will also be communicated out on social media as well, so that people have the opportunity to always. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yale.